Okay, hello, hello. Everyone, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. And I am going to just dive in and get us started. So, welcome to Face 2025. I hope that you joined us yesterday for our virtual kickoff. And today you are here for our very first session of Face 2025. This session is Beyond Inclusion, creating arts experiences that center and celebrate disability. My name is Kinsey Keck. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a white woman with brown hair. It's parted down the middle and pulled back in a clip today, and I'm wearing some large, round, wire-framed glasses and a dark, like hunter green knit V-neck sweater, and my background is blurred. And I'm also the programs director here at the Roundtable. I hope you all know us well, but for those who don't know, the Roundtable is a grassroots service organization that works to improve and advance the state of arts education in the city and state and beyond. Although we are currently meeting today via an online platform, the Roundtable would like to acknowledge that we work and live on unceded lands, Mannahatta, or the place that is also known as New York City, exists on the contemporary and ancestral homelands of the Canarsie, Munsee, Lenape, and Wappinger people. These sovereign nations and communities are still thriving here, and we continue to occupy their lands. We would like to give a moment of respect to them, as well as to the Black, Brown, and immigrant communities which have helped to build the city that we know today. As we recognize that all of our past, presents, and futures are intertwined, we would like to again uplift a handful of contemporary Indigenous arts organizations that we feel we can all support and learn from. Alex, if I could ask you to paste those in the chat for me, I would appreciate it. When she does, I encourage you to check out these organizations if you haven't before, learn about them, support them with donations if you can. And I also invite you, if you know of some organizations that you'd like to uplift, to share those in the chat with us as well. Thank you. Before we go any further, I also have to say a very, very big thank you to the conference sponsors for Face 2025. It is because of them and their generosity that we're able to bring you all of the programs that we are. Today's session is specifically brought to you by these three organizations that we have on the screen. We have Volunteer Lawyers for the Arts to thank, as well as New York City Children's Theater and Opera America, who is bringing you the Humanities and Opera Education Hub. You can learn more about these folks and all of our sponsors. Oops, sorry. You can learn about these folks and all of our other sponsors on the Face2Face website. And just a big shout out to them for making it possible. Now I can stop sharing and just share a few more reminders with you all. If you're having any trouble with Zoom while you're here with us today, please send me or my colleague Alex Latore a private message. We are here to help. Please do keep your mic on mute unless you're the person speaking so that we can all hear each other clearly. We encourage you to use the chat to connect with others on the call and to share any questions as well. We will be collecting your questions to address at the end of the panel today. As you can see, this meeting does include live ASL interpretation, as well as automatic closed captioning via Zoom. If you'd like to activate captions, you can find the Show Captions button on your toolbar or under the More section of your toolbar. And this session is being recorded. It will be made available to registrants by the end, after the conference has concluded, maybe before, who knows, but definitely by the end. We'll share that and all resources collected during the virtual sessions this week. And I believe that is enough for me. It is my sincere pleasure to pass the mic. I'm just going to add a spotlight first. And please join me in welcoming Renata Townsend from New Victory Theater. It's so wonderful to have you here.
Thank you so much, Kinsey. And hello, everyone. So lovely to share this space with you today. So we wanted to put this panel together because we were asking this question: how can we go beyond inclusion to create arts experiences that destigmatize disability and celebrate disabled artistry, turn students into allies and advocates for themselves and/or their disabled peers, and engage students in understanding and enacting accessible practices in art making. So what we're going to be bringing you today are two different case studies from the New Victory Theater: the successes, the challenges, and the opportunities that emerged from this work. We will have a Q&A, hopefully about a 15-minute Q&A at the end of this session. So feel free, if you have questions come up, feel free to either enter them into the chat. Kinsey's going to be collecting them, and then we're going to be using those to start our Q&A, or, write them down next to you, and you will have an opportunity to ask questions at the end. So with that, I am so thrilled to introduce our incredible panel. I will share that one of our panelists is currently on a plane and
No,
will
no, I'm here. I'm here, just in the
she
car.
made it. She's here. She made it. The drama of theater, everybody. Naomi is here. But let's start. I will start with myself, and then we'll go um uh actually I'm realizing Kinsey, would you mind putting up the slide for me?
Sure thing.
Thank you. So I'll start. So my name is Renata Townsend. I use she, her pronouns. My visual description: I have brown hair, about shoulder length. I'm a white woman. I am wearing a red sweater, and I'm in like a very bright attic space, my office. And then I'm gonna pass it over to Malik.
Hi, everybody. My name is Malik Paris. I'll give a visual description of myself. I have a tan shirt on, and I also have a sweater over it. It's a blue sweater, navy blue. I have black rimmed glasses, and I'm an African American. I'm actually an actor. I'm a dancer. I work with Omnium Circus. Also, I'm the ringmaster involved in this touring show for the past year and a half or so. And I'm really appreciative to be asked to join this panel to talk about the work I'm doing and the performances I'm doing.
Thank you so much, Malik. Naomi, are you able to get onto camera right now, or do you need a moment?
No, I'll get onto camera. It's just I'm in a car.
In 300
Hi.
feet,
Oh,
turn right on 37th Avenue.
hi everyone. My name is Naomi Avedani. I use she, her pronouns. And my visual description: I am currently in a car, so I don't know what you can see of me, but I have like shoulder length blonde hair. I'm a white woman, and I have like a maroon sweater on. Um, I am the theater teacher at the Ella Baker School. It's a pre-K through eighth grade intentionally small school on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And I'll talk more about this later when I talk about the project. But I I teach in a building with it's co-located, which is pretty typical for New York. I just teach theater for my school, but I'm one of 7 schools in this school building that takes up an entire city block. So I'll talk more about some of the other schools and how this collaboration began when we get further into the panel.
Thanks so much, Naomi. And then Emily, not last but not least.
Hi, everyone. Emily Bruner here, she, her pronouns. I am a white woman with a shag blonde haircut. My bangs are just above my pink glasses, and today I'm wearing a rainbow sweater. And behind me are a couple of framed prints and the back of my yellow chair. I am a teaching artist at the New Victory Theater, and I'm also an access educator throughout the city for organizations such as CoLab Theater Group, and I'm also an access educator with Lincoln Center Moments, which works with individuals with Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia and their care partners. So, hitting the pavement as a working teaching artist in many different fields, but so happy to be speaking on the behalf of the New Victory today and our relationship with Ella Baker School, Naomi and her students, and the students of the District 75 school in the building. All right, Renata, how do we feel? Are we introduced and ready for an access check?
I think we're ready. Yeah.
Fantastic. So, folks, we're going to do a very informal, what we call access check right now. For those that may not be aware, an access check is just a way of opening up the space transparently so that everyone can share any access needs or accommodations that they may need in order to show up as their most authentic self. An access need may be anything like water. It might be, I need to stretch and move my body right now. It may be, hey, you're talking a little too slowly. Can you speed up? Or I can't quite hear you. Can you speak up? Access check can be a multitude of things. So we're just going to hold some space for you to share either in the chat to the group at large, to any of us individually. We also invite you to come off mute if there is anything that we can do to better meet any access needs you have today. And Renata, while we wait for folks to chime in, do you have any access needs today that we can meet for you?
Oh, thanks for asking, Emily. I will share that around 5 o'clock, I have two children and they will come home. So you may see me going on and off mute. You may see me looking off camera, maybe with a look of like, please do not come near me. So that might be, that's my access check, children.
Thank you, Renata. Fantastic. Naomi, would you like to speak about your access needs today? I'm sure you have a few.
I have plenty. Yeah, so I was supposed to have landed over an hour and a half ago. And our landing back into New York was quite bumpy. And I'm also nearly 8 months pregnant. So it was a rough flight home. And I was already supposed to be in my living room at this point. So my access needs are that I will at some point need to go off camera or maybe even hop off the meeting for a moment as I get home and have to head into my elevator. I also have a nearly 3-year-old who just doesn't understand Zoom and may make himself known. He is incredibly open and lovely and loves to perform. And then I just might need to take a moment for myself post this flight. But that's it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Naomi. And Malik, please let us know if we can meet any of your access needs today.
Sure, really. No, well, I do have a cat here. So my cat may choose to jump up and make itself seen. But otherwise, don't mind my cat.
I never mind a cat. I can't wait for them to hop up.
Yeah, and obviously we have ASL interpreters here and they're spotlighted. So for anybody who might require an interpreter, and there'll be voice interpreting for me as well. So the interpreter's here available for anybody. And also during the Q&A, if anyone wants to put their camera on to say something, they can. And also, if in fact somebody is saying something, the interpreter may or may not need to request a clarification, just to make sure that the communication access goes smoothly.
Thank you so much. I'm just going into the chat to call out some access needs in our very own Zoom room. And access checks are an incredibly valuable tool just to kind of take the temperature of the space that you are in. And Wendy, it's for all of us, absolutely. So some needs that we can meet here in the room. Asma, hey Asma, needs to stretch, drink some water, please do so. We are also requiring some lunch. Please make yourself some lunch, Magenta. And no, again, for all of us. Finally, Latoya is thinking about some maintenance work in their apartment. Fantastic. So as you can see, access check can really cover a variety of needs, and we're really grateful for all of you for transparently sharing them. All right, Renata, I think we are good with the access check. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thanks, Emily. If we could put the slides back up, I'm going to do a little bit of context. So this is a quote that we love: "Feel free to disregard social etiquette in the name of access." So really thinking through quote, like what is socially acceptable, but also what you need as a human being. And that's really what we're prioritizing. So in that spirit, if we can go to the next slide, please. So this is another version of an access check that you can use in your classroom. If you have slide decks or visuals, this is a great way to let students know that these are some ways that you could interact. Also just giving a sense of there's many ways to participate, and as long as we're learning and being safe, I'm okay. Moving on to the next slide. So I just wanted to do a level set around the idea of ableism. So I'm going to read this quote. It's in a green box. Ableism is a system of assigning value to people's bodies and minds based on societally constructed ideas of normalcy, productivity, desirability, intelligence, excellence, and fitness. These constructed ideas are deeply rooted in eugenics, anti-Blackness, misogyny, colonialism, imperialism, and capitalism. This systemic oppression leads to people and society determining people's value based on their culture, age, language, appearance, religion, birth or living place, health, wellness, and or their ability to satisfactorily reproduce, excel, and behave. You do not have to be disabled to experience ableism. So in terms of the guiding questions for this session and what was really guiding us in these two case studies that we're going to talk about is, how do we as artists and teaching artists and program managers, how do we think beyond inclusion? And the other question is, what does it mean to be comprehensively inclusive? So it's not about making a modification for someone that can't do something, but rather, how are we creating opportunities for all different minds and all different bodies to engage So if you move on to the next slide, these are great. This is from the socialcreatures.org. This is the medical model of disability or the social model of disability. So in the medical model of disability, the individual, the disabled person, is thought as the problem, and they need to be fixed. Whereas in the social model of disability, the idea is that it's actually society that is the problem, and it has barriers for our disabled folks. So we are really trying to think about how the social model of disability in our teaching, our curriculum, our program design, the theater we create, what goes around the theater or the circus we create. And so that is something that we wanted to share with all of you. Another way to look at it, if you go to the next slide, is the curb cut effect. So this is from the universal design, which is actually an architectural theory. But the idea is that a curb, while for people wheelchair bound may need the curb, so many other people benefit. People with strollers, people with suitcases, people with bicycles, people carrying luggage. So even though the perhaps one idea was designing for disabilities, the idea is when we design for disabilities, we make things better for everyone. And so again, we're thinking through that in terms of the work that we're doing. You can go on to the next slide, please. So many of those resources that I just shared, the medical model and the social model, the curb cut effect, definition of ableism, those are all pulled from the Give Guide. If you're not familiar with the Give Guide, it's a free resource, a free website of 60+ resources that support arts educators in the creation of liberated learning environments. It was created by 3 organizations, one of which was the New Victory Theater, the Community Word Project, and Arts Connection. It's an incredible resource that if you're not familiar with, I highly recommend checking it out. We can add the link into the chat. It's Teach with Give. I'll add it right now. Oh, thanks, Erica. Erica is our behind the scenes fabulous person who is the director of education at the New Victory and helped us put all of this together. Shout out to Erica. Let's see. Now what we're going to do is we're going to move on to the next slide. One of my favorite resources in the Give Guide is called the Inclusive Curriculum and Showcasing Artists with Disabilities resource. It is so full of different artists of all different art forms that are doing such cool work that also are disabled. We wanted to highlight 2 today. The first is Drag Syndrome, Freshly Fierced, drag collective featuring highly addictive queens and kings with Down syndrome. The starting point is the art, before Down syndrome, before extra chromosome, before disability, before anything. So that is one of the amazing companies that you can find and learn more about on this resource. And the second one is Omnium, a bold new circus is a first of its kind, a singularly inclusive and accessible circus that is multi-abled and representative, highlighting and celebrating that disability and diversity shine through the joy and excitement of circus arts. Omnium Circus is comprehensively inclusive and accessible on stage, behind the scenes, and in our audience. And I am so pleased to now turn it over to Malik Paris, who happens to be the ringmaster of Omnium Circus when they performed at the New Victory. And Malik, I'm happy to ask you questions, or if you want to start, we can do it that way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I just like to talk about Omnium Circus. Um, it's just really been a very inclusive experience. And the circus, you can have a tour, you can go look around. We go on tour and we go to different states and we meet a lot of people who are really appreciative of our circus and the art that we perform. It is fully accessible and for people of all kinds of abilities. And yeah, it's just we get to go and show our skills of what people can do. Most people would think that it would be impossible for a lot of us to do these things, but we show them, hey, this is possible, that we can do more than you think. And it's just very inspiring for the audience to see. And after the show, we meet and greet, we say hello to everyone. We take pictures with people, with the whole crew. And it's just, people are always really appreciative and amazed by the show. And it's just really great to see their happy faces after the show. And yeah, they just really enjoy that immersive experience.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Oh yeah, and yeah, I was just thinking about the first time that I got involved with the circus. Um, I had a performing background, and we were kind of doing some clown things, but really it was just able to. I am also a dancer, do some storytelling, and with ASL, that being my language. Um, I was able to go get into the role of the ringmaster. And we have someone who speaks English, and I am doing the ASL at the same time. So it makes that a fully immersive and accessible experience in both of those languages. And we really have to advocate for, for everything to become that kind of universal design, what you're talking about, everything to be accessible for us to be able to be in that physical space and to communicate in the ways that are best for everyone there. And we've been doing these performances for quite a while now, and it's been wonderful.
That's wonderful. Can you share what it has been like to perform Omnium all over the country?
Oh, it's just the different places have all kinds of different energies. Um, the different venues, some of them can be kind of challenging in how we can get the stage set, how it feels, if it has more vibrations, because I can't hear the music. So it's really important that I can feel it. And so just sometimes some of the venues have more challenges in that. And I think that that also affects the audience as well, in what you can feel, what you can, that sense within that. And also if what kind of level we're on, if the stage is up higher, if it's lower, if we're eye to eye, those kinds of things. So of course, we've got different people every place we go. And there's some people that are like, man, I've never seen this kind of access before. And it's just been wonderful to work with such a skilled team. There's so much collaboration, and there's so many stories that are told on the stage. It just really feels there's a different energy almost every time, but it just depends on the town and the audience that we get. But yeah, it's just a great experience.
That's great. Can you share some of the access that Omnium offers either on stage or off stage?
Absolutely. Um, yeah, Omnium Circus, during the tech rehearsal, we always have interpreters available. They're provided. They come up on the stage if I'm in need of anything, if we're going through a rehearsal, making sure that the dancing part is good, is set. Um, And then we do make sure that our transitions are flowing, making sure that we're transitioning from scene to scene well. We're making sure that our spacing is good. And that helps me just to make sure that we're all visually, everything is going as it should. And the cast are, they've learned the basics of ASL for me very quickly. And so I'm able to have some basic conversations with them without interpreters. When they're not here, they're willing to learn and to sign. It is slow, it's slower going, but they are very willing to pick those things up. And we have that during that. We had a show at New Victory. We have the lighting system set up that warns us when everything's ready to go. That's a warning for me. They flicker the lights, and then I know, hey, we've got 5 minutes till show. I think maybe they do 3 different colors. There's a blue one, there's a yellow light, and a green light. No, I'm sorry, there's 4. There's also red. So I know, because of that code, we pick those colors and based on whatever my understanding is. And Yeah, it's been very helpful, and they've been very accommodating to me. And the cast, they make announcements to them. They say 10 minutes, 5 minutes to show. And so the lighting system is how they've accommodated me in that way, since I can't hear people running around shouting that. Um, the stage we keep pretty clear. Typically, we want to make sure during the sound check, we make sure pre-show that before the house opens and the audience comes in, we make sure the sound is good, that I'm feeling the vibrations that I need to be feeling so I can hit cues, and just make sure that we're all on the same page with that. Just trying to think. And those are most of the accommodations that has been provided to me for on stage during those tech rehearsals, the interpreters and all of those things. So, and it's gone really well. They're very cognizant of taking breaks. Just let us know if you need to take a break. You can step away and then come back. So typically this is something that we're doing every day since we're on tour. So we've gotten comfortable with, hey, I need to take a minute, and then we can go. So yeah, those are some of the
Wonderful. Thank
things.
you so much for sharing. Um, would you like to share anything else about yourself as an artist or performer?
Yeah, before I got involved with Omnium Circus, I was involved in theater. I had some experience working with some hearing arts within the hearing arts as well, with people who had no knowledge of ASL or deaf culture. And I was always really happy to work with them. I did a body movement class, studied their body movement, studied that kind of connection, and that's how we worked together. And, if you're apart, you're not able to work together. So we come together and exchange ideas that way, teach them ASL. They would teach me well, not teach me how to feel, but they would teach me resources, since they have always been dependent on hearing and I haven't been. So we talk about tempo, speed, those kinds of things that they could inform me about. And so we kind of incorporated both those hearing and deaf things within one performance. And I really appreciated that work and how, we could feel connected. And that really helped me in going into Omnium Circus, where, everyone is very welcoming and warm, and making sure that things are visually accessible, making sure, if the lights or if it's too loud, or, that's not good for some people that have the auditory sensitivities. And just learning a lot about being inclusive and accessible, to all that variety of needs. So just becoming more fully accessible and expanding my knowledge on that, and not basing it on limitations, but basing it on those opportunities. And yeah, so I am the only deaf person in my hearing family as I was growing up. So my family did learn ASL, learn sign language. They were very supportive in my goal of becoming a performer. I always loved the arts. And yeah, I had exposure to teaching artists and performing and leading in those next steps and that next generation, and bringing them up and being a representative of, what people can do as a deaf person. And I am a deaf BIPOC artist, and I'm also supporting interpreter performing arts, interpreters that are doing interpreting performing arts. And we just want to have full access to theater. So to theater goers. So, and a lot of people say, hey, I can't afford to go. But and other people say it's because we don't have interpreters, there's no schedule, we can't get them scheduled. So I'm really trying to stretch that and make sure that that access is there for everybody. So I think that's all I have to share for now.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Um, we are going to now pop back over, and I'm going to, as a teaching artist, talk about So Omnium Circus was performing I'm Possible at the New Victory Theater last season, and we were creating pre-show lesson plans to go into the classrooms before they saw those performances. So I wanted to just share some of the things that the New Victory Theater did in preparation for those teaching artists to go into those classrooms. So the first thing that they did was they led a very special professional development for the teaching artist ensemble, which included a question and answer session with members from Omnium Circus. And we also discussed, had a discussion about ableism and in the classroom and disability history. Lastly, one of our teaching artists, Liz Bollock, actually does all of the audio descriptions for Omnium Circus's shows. And so she showed us how she does audio descriptions for circus. So again, it was just another level and another level of exposure and development for all of us as we're learning about this work. The other thing that we did was we incorporated ASL in our facilitation of the lesson plan. We learned simple ASL like ringmaster or circus tent, and also simple round of applause or thank you. We also made sure to have a visual slide deck for every lesson plan for people who may have slower processing or like visuals. And we included a social story for those students who might like to know the plan beforehand. And lastly, one of the things that I found to be one of the most powerful parts of the work was we showed pictures from Omnium Circus of the circus performers, and some had visible disabilities. And so that was an entry point into conversations about, you know, what is possible. And so that was a really exciting thing. If you go to the next slide, I also wanted to just show, this is something that we started with the I'm Possible workshops, but now we've just continued as a regular practice. So in our slide deck, we always say you're going to the New Victory Theater. This is the outside of the theater. And when you get inside, this is what the inside of the theater looks like. Because we realized sometimes for young people that have never been to the theater, it can be a pretty overwhelming experience. And so it was nice to be able to share with students. This is what, like a grounding piece. So yeah, that is a little bit about Omnium. And now I'm going to pass it over to Emily and Naomi. And I believe Naomi is back at her apartment. And they are now going to talk about their 8th grade residency at the Ella Baker School.
All right. Hello, everyone. Emily here again. I'm just going through our participant list to see if we lost Naomi. I think we did, and that's okay. I will take it away first. So I have now had the pleasure of being in Naomi's incredible theater classroom for 2 years, doing a residency on behalf of the New Victory and creating an original piece of theater with her students, specifically for the District 75 school that is within her building. So each of these residencies kind of took a different lens. The first one we had, hi Naomi, I'm just giving a little rundown and I'll tap you in when you've caught your breath. So our first residency was a leisurely 15 weeks long. And from the get, we had decided that we wanted to adapt A Midsummer Night's Dream, make it an immersive sensory experience for that District 75 school. We had about, I don't know, like 7 sessions to learn about how to devise specifically a piece of sensory theater. And then that second half of the residency was spent in rehearsal for A Midsummer Night's Dream. So that was year 1, which is the lens that we'll mainly be looking through today. Here are some images which Naomi can speak about in detail. But just to zoom over to this year's residency to give you a little bit of a contrast, we had half the amount of time. It was just a brief 8-week residency. And so therefore our positioning kind of shifted a little bit. With less time, we still wanted to create an original piece of immersive sensory theater, but it was a little more devised, a little more improvisational. There were less formal costumes, etc. But I think in both instances, the groups of students really tailored their script, tailored their performances to the target audience. And it was really a joy to see these 2 groups of students go on this journey with the teaching artists and with their audiences. But I will pause here. I have vamped enough, and I'm going to hand the microphone over to Naomi to speak a little bit more about our first year together with A Midsummer Night's Dream. Hey, Naomi.
Great. Hello. Thanks, Emily. Perfect timing. Is my sound okay? Great. So I mentioned in my intro that I am the theater teacher at the Elevator School, and that it is pre-K through 8th grade. We're an intentionally small school, so we have, for those that don't know, New York City Public Schools, we have at least 1 ICT class per grade. Sometimes both are ICTs, so they are half general ed, like 60% special ed, and the rest are general ed students, and they're co-taught by in the classroom 2 teachers, a general education teacher as well as a special ed teacher. And students have varying needs, IEPs, 504s within that class, but they're in a general education setting for this ICT. So the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, the middle schoolers at my school are all, it's just 1 class per grade, and they are all ICT classes. And generally the classes that generally everyone has had theater from pre-K to 8th grade. So by the time students get to 8th grade, my goal is for them to be able to devise something original, to create something original. And as I mentioned before, we are co-located in the building with 7 different schools, the Elevator School being one of those schools. Another school within our building, they all kind of function separately, but they are like, we pass each other in the hallways, and my physical classroom is within the hallways of M225, which is a district 75 school, which is, it's many things, but in New York City, it essentially means that it's a highly specialized school with highly specialized teachers for students with neurodiversities. And it really depends on the type of school and where that school is, what the school specializes in. So M225, which is the school that we are co-located with, is specifically a middle school, so 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, for students on the autism spectrum or who have been diagnosed with autism and other neurodiversities. So as I said before, the students in our school, in our co-located building, really do function separately from each other. But as a theater educator, that's just not acceptable to me. And I need to be able to collaborate with everyone. And as an artist myself, I'm also an educator, but as an artist, I really enjoy devising original work, and I really enjoy specifically creating theater for neurodiverse audiences. That's actually how Emily and I met many years ago. We figured out we were in a show together through a small company called Blue Laces that creates theater for neurodiverse audiences, sensory theater. And so when I was dreaming up this project last year, I reached out to the New Victory Theater, as I know that they have teaching artists that have experience working with theater companies both in New York and beyond, and with students and programming for neurodiverse audiences, neurodiverse participants. So when I thought about this idea, I thought, who better to reach out than the New Victory Theater? The New Victory Theater paired me with Emily and Anna, who's not here with us right now. And then this year we added an additional teaching artist, Christian. And so Emily mentioned that this first residency, we kind of really got to dig in. We were really lucky in that my 8th graders, they were just a really special creative group of kids who was really interested in all aspects of theater. So you'll see in just a moment, you'll see examples of not only like using found objects to design and transform spaces, but students were excited to write their own script. Students were excited to design interactive moments. Students were excited to transform various spaces within our school. So before Emily and Anna came into our school, I had the opportunity for 3 times a week for about 4 or 5 months to work with my students on creating their own sensory theater and what sensory theater looks like and what it exists like in all over the country. And I also had the opportunity for my students to create their own mini sensory experiences and really access various stories and various experiences of their own through their 5 senses. So the pictures that you'll see here are some pictures from their performance. So the picture on the left of your screen is the final scene during the royal wedding, and it ended with the audience having a dance party after the wedding, and there being a grand feast with cookies at the end as part of our taste. So we tried to access all of the sensory bits throughout the performance. And then the picture on the right is the rude mechanical space. So each of the characters that we decided on had their own specific space. So on the left is the royals, the castle, and then on the right is the forest where the rude mechanical was rehearsed, and it just so happened to be a small stage. Next slide, please.
And Naomi, if I could interject for one moment.
Yeah.
One thing that I found really special and effective about both years of our residency is we began rooting in your students. So for example, at the top of our midsummer residency last year, we really had time to explore like what I call the sensory yucks and yums of each individual child. So they were like, oh, I love the feeling of velvet, or oh, I hate the feeling of velvet. And by starting that conversation about what we gravitate towards and away from, we were then able to start the conversation about the needs and preferences of our audiences and incorporate some of our students' preferences and aversions. And we also were eventually able to get some of that information from the District 75 teachers to further incorporate that into our presentation. So I just appreciated how we were constantly pivoting between the preferences and needs of the Ella Baker students as well as who they were performing for. So there was just this lovely kind of back and forth. All right, continue. Sorry to interject.
No, that's good. And I'm certain this is a project that I'm very excited about. I'm very interested in, so I could honestly talk about this for hours, but we don't have that kind of time. So if I miss anything, Emily, that you feel like, I wish you had said that, please feel free to jump in. So as I said, we took over kind of the portion of the bottom floor of our school building. And I mentioned before that there were different spaces devoted to different characters. It was an experiential, immersive piece of theater as well as a sensory piece of theater. I'm also, again, as an artist and a theater goer, very inspired by Punch Drunk and immersive theater in general. And so kind of wanted to recreate a piece in which there were many different things happening in many different spaces, and the audience could kind of choose where they were interested in going and what drew them, and they can stay in the same space for the entire cycle, or they can go to different spaces throughout the different cycles. So all the way to the right, you'll see Queen Titania attending to the flower garden. That was another space. So it's actually to the right and to the left, the two images on the edge. And then in the center, we transformed the hallway connecting all of these spaces into the forest. So whenever the audience had to move from one space to the other, they always had to go through this forest space that, if you look carefully, it's really just butcher paper that my students taped to the walls with some fairy lights and some leaves that they cut up and gels that they put over lights. And it really did transform the hallway. So that was our visual piece. And I'll show you in just a moment, there's an auditory piece that goes with this, where there were small speakers placed throughout the space that help create that feel of a forest. That was our auditory piece. And sounds of wind, birds feeding, leaves rustling, things like that. Next slide, please. So this is just the forest space without the lights off, and then you'll see one of the students that worked on. The student in particular is an incredible visual artist, and he kind of had the vision of bringing this space to life. Next slide, please. This is more of moments, small moments from the different spaces that I've already mentioned. Next slide, and I think the next slide is our videos. No, it's not. Oh, yes, this is the slide that I wanted to share a little bit about. In each space, and something that I thought that was brilliant that Anna and Emily came up with, and maybe Emily will talk to it a bit, was gamification and creating moments for audience to be able to interact with performers if they chose, and kind of become part of the piece in a very immersive, very real way, where they were kind of instrumental into moving the piece forward if they chose. Emily, do you want to talk about what the different games that we're looking at here?
Yeah, that would be great. So in addition to toggling between the sensory yucks and yums of the students in both communities, we also really thought about a couple things. We thought about gamification, the invitation, and the presentation that is so present within immersive theater, or theater in which the fourth wall is broken and the audience is equally a part of the experience. So with gamification, essentially, a performer will do a repeatable gesture or offer an activity that then the audience is invited into. So there are a few different levels of engagement that can be present in a game. We can have kind of a solo individual game, something that an audience member could do completely by themselves, unencumbered by anyone else. Then we have kind of a partnered game, which is more of that parallel play moment. I'm rolling a ball back and forth here. You're rolling a ball back and forth there. We're doing the same game next to each other. And then finally, a kind of whole group direct invitation, something that might involve the whole group should they opt into that experience. So looking at these images here, I am noticing the bottom two. I see a fairy. I know they're a fairy because they have wings on their back. Exactly, the mouse is encircling that fairy wearing a crown and wings. And she is offering flowers to the audience member. That audience member is choosing a flower from the box before adding it to the garden, which you will see behind them in that second image. So the gamification there was kind of how we're making Titania's garden grow. And the invitation was a very soft, gentle, non-speaking invitation of just an offer of this box, as well as the modeling of the fairy that you see there, kind of choosing it, and placing it on the garland. So in a gamification, there's no wrong or right way to engage, but several entry points or invitations that the performer extends to the audience. Naomi, is there another game that you would like to discuss before we move on?
I think I just want to also share that the space that you see in the other two images, which was our royal palace, was also used as an egress space. So something that my students learned both from Emily and Anna, and then also they learned from watching other pieces of sensory theater, like from Trusty Sidekick Theater Company, from Polyglot, from Oily Cart, and these are other companies that create sensory theater, was that there always needs to be a space for egress for students to be able to kind of have, actually not for students, for audience members to have a choice should they not want to be part of the immersive experience one-to-one. It's still part of the immersive experience for them, but perhaps the lights are dim, perhaps there's calm music, perhaps there's free choice within that space and lots of opportunity for them to discover their own sensory yucks and yums. So for example, in this Royal Palace space, there was music playing, there was a dress-up corner, which you'll see in the top section. You'll see the picture to the right is the teacher and his students dressing up from the dress up corner. That was a really popular one. There's an area with fidget toys that were midsummer themed. There was a space for Play-Doh and other like tactile sensory play. There was anyway, there were many different opportunities for audience members to interact should the more theatrical spaces, more traditionally theatrical spaces, because this is also theatrical, should those become overwhelming or overstimulating at any point, they always had the option to go back, to return to the Royal Palace. But as you can see, that they're here probably in what I'm saying is that everything was framed within Midsummer. They were always part of the experience and part of the performance. One more thing I forgot to mention before I share a couple of videos, short clips of the performance, is that because I'm so lucky to be to work so physically close to the other educators in 226, the District 75 school. One of the teachers of these students is sixth grade. I think she actually teaches sixth and seventh grade. She teaches in the highest needs class, so it's called a 6-to-1-to-1. There are 6 students, 1 aide, usually more than that, and 1 teacher. So students with the highest needs of support. She came in and spoke to my students and taught them about what it means to have autism, what it means to have sensory needs, what it means to be a sensory seeker or sensory avoidant, and specifically her students. And she talked about the supports that she provides as an educator every day for her classroom and for her students. And things like communication devices, which you can see that one of the students in the image to the right is using. Things like sign language and other supports that students have that they know to use, and so that my students would be familiar with them and be able to create their performance in support of these and in celebration of these supports. Emily, anything else to add before we share the videos?
Yeah, just one little cherry on the top of that point is, in addition to that incredible educator coming in and sharing the sensory needs of her students, we also got to have a conversation about and then see in real time that those needs might dissipate or change in a theatrical space. So many students that experienced Midsummer had not experienced a live piece of theater before. And especially a live piece of theater that was so tailored to them and didn't really have rules of how an audience should be behaving. But I can just speak as a performer for this population. Specifically my work with Trusty Sidekick before many of those shows, which were tailor-made for a similar audience, we would receive audience forms that would maybe give us information about any sensory preferences that our audience had. And so many of the things on those forms would then not be present that day of the performance because so many other things had like entered the chat, so to speak. So it was lovely to see the students really take all of those things into consideration while building this experience, but then let go when they didn't need to be addressed the day of. So it was an interesting kind of modulation to see these eighth graders make.
One last thing that I'll share that came up. I think it came up more this year, Emily, maybe than last year, but I'm sure it came up last year as well. So just as a reminder, I was doing this with what's called an ICT class, so it's partially general ed, partially special ed, but students that don't necessarily have experience interacting with beyond, seeing them in the hallway with students with autism or Down syndrome or other neurodiversities. My students really learn how to listen to and read their audience members' cues. And so after every single performance that we did this year, and perhaps we did this last year too, and I just don't remember, we debriefed with my students. And after the first performance, my eighth graders said, like, I don't think they got it. Like, I don't think they really understood. They weren't really interacting. And then I, along with Emily, Anna, and Christian, the three teaching artists that we worked with, had to remind them that processing looks different and response looks different. And sometimes the students just need a moment to actually be able to respond to you using their devices, using their supports. And explained it to them, explained that sometimes you have to wait maybe 5, maybe 7 seconds and show them what that wait time might be. And each performance that followed, my students did give that time, and they learned so much, and I could see how much they grew within the span of 4 performances. Because they learned so much about their audience members, they were able to make connections, and they were like, oh wow, like someone came up to me afterward and signed thank you, or like typed something on their iPad and told me about their experience at the show, and wow, they really got it. It was just about giving them the time and the space to be able to do it in their time. So for me, that was so powerful, especially with this year's class, who has their own challenges. There are special education students and students with IEPs in that class. So I think it was also really empowering for them to be able to see their power as an artist and their influence. That's the word I'm looking for. Their influence as an artist in creating these spaces.
That's wonderful. Naomi, do you want to show us the videos?
I was just going to say, I could talk forever about this. I want to show you the videos just so you get an idea of what we've been talking about. Let's see. The first one, if you want to, Kinsey, request access again, I will just give it to you right now. And then the second one, if you want to click that one, I'll narrate for a second. I see it just came up. The beauty of technology. There you go. You have access. So the first video on the left is just an example of you should have access. It was just an example of walking through that hallway space and just being able to see and hear the space. The video on the right is a moment from the play where the audience is put into a role as kind of the magic of the fairies casting the spell on the lovers in the forest. And you'll see, there we go. So there's, if sound is not shared, can it be? So that folks can hear the sound in the video.
Yes, sorry, just give me one.
Imagine you are hearing the tweeting of birds and the rustling of leaves.
Maybe a waterfall.
Perhaps. Some chimes, some magic sounds.
Build it in your
And then just as you're watching the second video, pay attention to the girl with the pigtails. Just the sheer joy on her face as she takes part in creating magic as part of our performance to cast the spell on the lovers. So it's a short one, but it's a really lovely one. So yes, I'm gonna pass it over to Emily if you have anything else to share, and if not, to Renata.
I have nothing more to share. Thanks, Naomi. Handing it over to Renata.
Thank you, Emily and Naomi. This is Renata speaking again. Thank you so much. I'm very disappointed that I didn't get to experience it. It looks like a very, very special show. So congratulations. Kinsey, you can turn off the slide deck for a moment. So now is our time where we're going to kind of open it up and synthesize what our learnings were. So Malik, I'd love to start with you with the question, what do you hope young people take away from seeing the I'm Possible circus or from seeing deaf artists or artists with disabilities on stage?
Yeah, well, I hope that they will take all of that in. And when they see that, they'll learn that there is a spectrum of people that can be involved in these. You can learn so much and you can give so much. And I really hope that they take that into their theater experiences and take that into the discussion. You know, they could talk about, oh, I saw this and it was so amazing. And it didn't matter what barriers it seemed like they maybe had, they could still do it. So I just want them to see that, that could maybe change their perspective or their mindset of, well, maybe I can do this. And I think that'll change how they see that, and it'll change, maybe how they see access as well. That 100% access means that you're continuing to have that conversation and it ripples out and more people become aware of it. um, People are always so amazed by the incredible access that Omnium Circus has. And if people haven't experienced that kind of full access, it's hard to imagine. If you're going into just a regular show, a regular circus, people think it should be more like that. But getting that different mindset, you're in a safe space where everyone can be involved and can have that access to that performance. Another thing I think would be just be getting passionate about something. You can see, I mean, it's very evident with all of the performers, with all the diverse performers there, that they are passionate about that. They are obsessed with this one thing. And I, as a deaf person, I get up and I am I am showing that deaf artists can be included in a circus, can be included in these performances. And as the ringmasters typically don't sign. They typically speak, or even if they're speaking Spanish or English, it doesn't matter, but there's not really many languages included within that. People tend to have one idea of that. So I just want young people to think about how things can change, how things can be changed to really make sure that people are having the access to these performances that they need, and that the work that goes on behind the scenes or on the stage, if it's a TV show, if it's a movie, if it's whatever industry, it can apply to that as well as live theater. But all of those things can be made accessible.
Wonderful. Emily and Naomi's similar question. Can you talk a little bit about and you did allude to it, but I guess in more specific detail, just the experience of your students and their relationship and understanding to disability after partaking in the residency.
I suppose I can start. So as I mentioned, it is an ICT class. So there are students in the class that have disabilities, and some don't want to talk about it, and some are not shy to talk about it. There were students in this class actually with autism in the midsummer class, who again were not shy to talk about it and not shy to talk about their experiences. There were students with sensory extenuans, who maybe, didn't have an IEP, but maybe were sensitive to loud noises or really didn't like certain textures. So in this class specifically, there were a lot of students that felt, I think empowered by being able to share their own experience and being able to step into the role of creating art for someone with a shared experience, and kind of be experts. And then secondarily, it was also empowering for them to learn about something new. It's really easy to walk down the hallway and see students that are stimming, or see students that are using a device to communicate, and walk past it, right? Because again, we're co-located, we're sharing the hallways, but we never really interact with each other. So it gave my students an opportunity to really ask questions, and throughout both of these processes, both Emily and Anna and Christian and I, and also their classroom teacher, the teacher that came in to speak to us about her students, told our students, there's no question that you can't ask. There's nothing off limits, and we'll help you through it. Like, you're not going to offend us. Ask the question, because we want you to learn about this, and we want you to be informed to the best of your ability so that you can do your best work. So, and I think that's something that we don't often do as a society.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of reiterate Naomi's point about how drastically the performances shifted from the first to the last. There was such incredible growth, everything from allowing more wait time for processing to modulating the volume of a voice to slowing a moment down. There was a key example in this year's residency, which one scene culminated in a food fight, which meant confetti got thrown into the air, and they were peas, green peas. And the first performance, which was also the first time we'd had an audience, the students were so excited to throw this confetti that they did so with gusto, which was a little too much for the audience that was in the space at that moment. And in our reflection, we chatted about that and we're like, okay, how can we kind of soften that moment to make it more enjoyable? So instead of like throwing up, we counted down so it wasn't a surprise and then like sprinkled it softly. And that pivot was in part because of their empathy and their sensitivities to their audience. So it was really impactful seeing their personal growth, because transparently one challenge of the residency is, although they had time to speak to the classroom teacher, as far as I know, there wasn't really interfacing with the audience until they were in front of them as audience. So it was a pretty big leap, and I was so proud of them for making it and then being flexible with what they were learning with each performance, and the understanding they were getting about disability, about how to create an inclusive piece of theater.
Yeah. What I'm also hearing is like, it's not the binary, right? It's not right or wrong. It's trying something and then adapting and modifying based on what we learned. So I think that's really beautiful. Um, I'm curious about what's challenging about this work, because it can be challenging in many ways. There's lots of obstacles. Can each group kind of talk about maybe it doesn't matter who wants to start, but just like, what are one or two challenges that you faced, and what was difficult about each of the either performing in Omnium or the residencies?
I I could say something. Yeah, I had experienced something. There was somebody who was a filmmaker, and I told this filmmaker, they had to have an interpreter with them. And this person was very open and wanted to interact with me and insisted that they didn't really need an interpreter. And I said, "Are you sure? Because if you want to interact with me, you might most likely you'll need an interpreter." And this person, felt confident. And so, of course, in the beginning, interacting was a bit tentative. This person, hadn't had experience with interpreters before, but then, we worked things out. And then so we had the interpreters there. And so the person became more comfortable in terms of how to use the interpreters or how to work with interpreters, how interpreters are set up. And this person would apologize, if they had accidentally bumped into the interpreter or whatever it was. And they just ultimately they figured it out. But we had to figure out solutions because, you can't, because there were some issues in terms of logistics placement. And so we came up with a system. It was a little bit of a challenge, but this person was willing to change how they approached their work. And so in order to accommodate my needs, and it was a tough time because there were times where because we weren't using an interpreter, we were interacting back and forth, writing back and forth with each other. This person did learn a few signs. Just so you're aware, I'm the only deaf performer within, and this is a filmmaker for the company, and I'm the only deaf performer within the company. And so this person, I mean, we did, want this to be a safe place to work. And so I decided it was best to request an interpreter because I thought that that would be, the best approach. But, this film director felt very confident about, interacting with me without an interpreter. And so we I was challenged by that, and they ultimately were challenged by that. And then it turned out, that we did have to bring in an interpreter, but this person initially was feeling very confident that they could handle it, but it turned out to be, sort of difficult. And we realized an interpreter would make things go smoother. So that I would say that's a challenge that I experienced before. Uh, in terms of dealing with hearing space, as a deaf performer, how do I navigate hearing space? And so we want to make sure that the space is open for all people, including deaf people.
Great. Thank you, Malik. Thanks for sharing. Emily, do you have anything you'd like to share?
Sure. First, I'll just say hello to Malik's cat. I see your tail. Meow. I guess a challenge for me as an educator, as a theater maker, someone stepping into the Ella Baker community, and I'll say I think we did a good job. However, the plates that we were spinning of devised theater or theater that we are coming up with ourselves, a pre-existing script, making the space inclusive and sensory friendly. There were a lot of boxes that we were trying to check with this residency. And I think everything kind of slotted together. But it was a challenge. It was a challenge to make sure the Ella Baker students' needs were being met, the audience's needs were being met, that the teaching artists felt like they were on equal footing with Naomi and that we were in an understanding. So yeah, I think just the multiple plates that we were spinning and the boxes that we were checking were a challenge, but one that we met with panache, might I say.
Love that. Yeah, I mean, even, for something like this panel, there are so many parts and elements for access. And I think when done well, it feels good, but it is a lot. But I also think it's a muscle, right? It's like, and the more we do it, the more comfortable we get. And it's just about changing how we do things to make them more accessible for all. So thanks for sharing that, Emily. So we have about 8 minutes left, and I'd love to open it up to our group. First of all, kudos to all of the participants. 55 participants at 5:22 on a Tuesday. So exciting. Thank you all for being here. So I'm actually going to start. We have a question from Joy in the chat. Any feelings about transforming the connotation disabled to awesomely abled or diversely abled? In parentheses, decentering the PWI construct. If anyone would like to speak towards that, I'm also thinking about in the Give Guide, there is a language resource that I will also put in the chat. But would anyone like to speak towards this idea of language?
Emily here. Hi. I do not have an opinion. I feel as if any language shifts like that, I should defer to those that are disabled to make those decisions and kind of push that language forward. But one thing that I will say is there is so much loving disagreement that I have noticed within the disability community, whether it's disabled, non-disabled, like person first, disability first language. I have noticed that the trends are constantly shifting and people's preferences should really be centered. So I love that question, Joy. I do not have an answer as a non-disabled person. And I wonder, Malik, do you have a preference?
Well, yeah, I'm pretty open and flexible, in terms of how people view me. If they view me as a person with a disability, as a disabled person, I don't, don't necessarily identify as disabled. I identify as deaf, and that's a different identity. And so disabled is not something that is used within our community. We call ourselves deaf. And so yeah, sometimes that can be confused with disability. I do have a partner who has a disability, and it's actually a recent disability. It was since the pandemic. And so that person, my partner, has sort of taken on that identity of disability. And I respect that. I respect, whatever, an individual would like to use for themselves. And as Emily, you said, it's really about individual preference and how, these are labels. These are labels that people use. And, for example, within the gay community, I identify as gay, I'm gay. And there are so many different ways that we, within the LGBTQ community, they identify as well. And so that's also a phenomenon unto itself. And I think it just depends on the individual and what, they want to identify as and what they're comfortable with.
Great, thank you. Malik, you also talked about identity. And this really isn't a give workshop, but it feels so good. There are so many resources. So I'm going to put another resource about intersectionality, which is kind of what Malik was talking about in terms of identity and labeling. So I think that that's another thing you can look at. So we have about 4 minutes left. Does anyone have any additional questions for our gorgeous panel? I am wondering, as people are processing, are there any resources that folks, we are sharing the Give Guide, but Emily, I know you have a few that maybe you'd like to share for, this really is just scratching the surface. And we're so appreciative that you're all here. But I'm going to pass it over to the librarian for this section we call Books with Emily.
Oh, what a dream. I would love to have that YouTube channel. Hello, everyone. It's Books with Emily. And here are just some of the resources that I have enjoyed. So we have 2 books by powerhouse Alice Wong, Disability Visibility, as well as Disability Intimacy. Could not recommend her work anymore.
Good book.
Yes.
Yes, Alice
And
Wong is amazing.
absolutely. Also on my shelf somewhere is her memoir, which is equally valuable. We have another memoir by the powerhouse Judy Heumann, and a couple other books I'll just hold up. The first called Against Techno-Ableism, as well as The Future is Disabled. So just a few resources that are on my shelf about disability or disability justice and or memoirs. And then finally, the Sensory Theater Bible, if you will, by incredible artist Tim Webb, who was the artistic director of Oily Cart. So those are some of the resources. Against Techno-Ableism, The Future is Disabled, Being Human, and the 2 Alice Wong books. So those are some that are on my shelf.
Thank you so much, Emily, for sharing those. Some of those I'm like, oh, I need to get that. I'm reading Neil's comment. I'm not sure I'm an ideal, but having experienced a fair amount of futures, I always cast my members. So Neil is sharing, I'm going to read it aloud. I always ask my cast members to determine their language with me, but a common spectrum response in my teen and young adult casts have been to use the term neurodiversity and recognize its unique gifts in the craft of acting. Yes. I think that just to end, what was the title of that book, Emily? The Future is Disabled? Yeah. So in the spirit of The Future is Disabled, what better field to be in terms of arts and education? I really think that arts are such a key and such an answer to making our world a better place. And I hope that you got something out of this session. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here. I'd love to give a very special thank you to our fabulous panelists, Malik, Emily, and Naomi. Thank you all so much for sharing and all of the incredible work that you do. And yeah, have a great rest of your day. Kinsey, I don't know if there's anything else you need to say to the group.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Please join me again. I hope you're seeing all the love in the chat, which has been throughout the whole panel. Just thank you all so much for being here with us, for sharing your stories, experiences, expertise, and resources. We're so grateful. To those of you who have asked in the chat about like links that we've shared and Emily's book recommendations, I've recorded those already. They will be in a resource list that we are in the middle of compiling for all of our virtual sessions. So you will receive that via email from me. I also just wanted to quickly share what is up next. So we hope that you can join us for the rest of our virtual face-to-face sessions. Up next tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., we have Turning Data into Advocacy, Insights from the New York City Teaching Artists Compensation and Employment Initiative. That is with the Roundtable's very own Kim Olson. And we are really, really excited to share some initial findings from our research initiative. So join us for that tomorrow morning. And then you have the other 3 remaining sessions as well. Tomorrow is a packed day. We will have 2 sessions, and then we will do 2 morning sessions on Thursday and Friday to close out this week before we head into next week's in-person conference days. If you would like to learn more about those sessions, I'll just pop the schedule link in the chat so you can read the descriptions and information on the presenters as well. And I believe that's it. Thank you all. Again, thank you to our incredible panelists, and thank you all for joining us. We hope to see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful rest of your evening.